Well, yes, Phillip Schofield lied and his ITV career has died. I mean, how outrageous that at the ITV, a channel that preaches and screeches much in the way of wackery and wogery, that they can get rid of the likes of Piers Morgan and Jeremy Clarkson for saying mean words about Duchess of Montecito, Meghan Markle, or Jeremy Kyle, but they can keep someone like Schofield on their flagship morning show for such a long time. Dan Wooten of this parish, of course, dropped bombshell revelations on Twitter last night of how he went to ITV management with the story that's now been confirmed whilst he was at the Sun newspaper in 2019. ITV has said today that it did conduct an investigation into Phillip Schofield's affair with a much younger male employee, but both parties denied the claims. Now, Schofield has disclosed his relationship with said younger male colleague, while still being married to his wife of 30 years, Stephanie Lowe, to the Daily Mail. Do you remember the fanfare about how stunning and brave Phillip was to come out as gay? Well, now it looks like naught more than a convenient woke screen. Precious little in the way of compassion was offered to his wife by a fawning press and the Twitter sphere, a wife who was lied to and for so long and cheated on. How dare, frankly, if you ask me, Phillip make fools of so many as he had his youthful cake and ate it? How different do we now look at those tearful scenes on the infamous This Morning sofa as Holly Willoughby and Schofield announced he was gay? Schofield was seen as the jewel in ITV's presenting crown, presenting other shows like the British Soap Awards, The Cube and 5 Gold Rings. No, I haven't heard of them either. But look, in my view, this whole This Morning edifice ought to come tumbling down. It is clearly built on a bed of lies. There are already calls for ITV CEO Carolyn McCall's head to actually roll as a result of the fallout. Now, my colleague Eamon Holmes, I think it's safe to say, hasn't held back. Perhaps put it only how he indeed could. As a former presenter on This Morning for 15 years, he tweeted, "Schofield has finally been caught out, but he's not the only guilty party. 4 high members of ITV management knew what sort of man he was and never once took action to prevent him controlling or taking advantage of his position over young people." And regarding Holly Willoughby's reaction, Eamon said this on this very channel.
She says, the couch will not feel the same without him being there. Well, she wanted him not there, so what's she moaning about the couch not feeling the same for? I mean, they deserve each other, I suppose.
Well said, Eamon. She's more fake than me granddad's teeth, I'll tell you that much. Eamon went on to say that Schofield lied to both him and wife Ruth Langsford, adding that Ruth and I were deceived and lied to. One day I will tell the story. We had no issue with him being gay, only support. What transpired took us for fools. The man told us complete lies and we unfortunately believed him. Now, folks, it's all compounded, of course, by months of bad press on the rift with this long-time co-host, Holly Willoughby. Of course, his brother's sex abuse trial and the public outcry over his VIP queue-busting visit to our late and great Queen's lying in state. Tonight, Willoughby issued a blistering statement without a trademark use of pretty emojis by saying this: "It's taken time to process yesterday's news. When reports of this relationship surfaced, I asked Phil directly if this was true and was told it was not. It's been very hurtful to now find out that this was a lie." Which, I tell you what, is pretty damn interesting, given Dan Wooten reports for Mail Online tonight that ITV cars ferried this young man from the TV studios to Schofield's apartment. Insiders are asking questions about just how much was known of the unwise but not illegal, Schofield's words, not mine by the way, relationship. Now, I dare say this story's going to run on for the rest of the weekend. Perhaps Schofield's former puppet colleague, Gordon the Gopher, has a thing or two to say. But whatever more there is to come out, the Muppeteer is clearly Schofield. This is all enough to damage not just Schofield, but also ITV and its defenders. Now, Albie, I can see you champing at the bit there, ready to go for my jugular. What do you make of all that? You don't agree with a word, do you?
I think you're putting words into my mouth, Darren. Look, there is no doubt in my mind at all that Phillip Schofield has behaved absolutely reprehensibly. And I think this whole episode of what has happened at This Morning has tainted what is a loved and cherished television show by millions of people across the country who tune in every morning to watch This Morning. Even this week, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was fangirling over meeting Alison Hammond. I have to say I would be as well if I had the pleasure of meeting Alison.
Yeah, that was a bit cringe, I'm not going to lie.
I loved it, as you can see from my Twitter. But I think what I would say about this issue is that we've got to remember that there are real people at the heart of these stories. There's Phillip Schofield, of course, there's a young man in question, there's Phillip's family, his daughters, his wife, who I believe he's still married to. And so when we're talking about these stories, I think we've got to remember that. And it wasn't that long ago that we were all mourning the tragic result of Caroline Flack's trial by media. And I think my concern is we might be seeing something similar here. And I would really hate for something like that to happen to Phillip, even if I completely despise what he's done.
Do you know what? I actually don't agree with that at all. I mean, Caroline was hounded. Caroline Flack, that is.
Is he not being hounded? Did you not just hound him?
She was hounded, yes, I did just hound him, and rightly so,
right,
because he's a liar and a charlatan. But Caroline Flack was hounded because she had an argument, an altercation with her boyfriend. This isn't the same as telling a complete litany of lies for years on end.
Well, she was accused of being an abuser. I mean, that was the accusation, and that was what was going round across the media. And then, of course, being accused of a crime meant that then she had that trial by media. So I think the comparison is actually quite similar. And you know, Phillip Schofield, as far as we are aware, has done nothing illegal. And so I think that we cannot use the media in this way to portray him in this way.
Right. And Benjamin, what do you agree with that?
Well, no, I think, you know, Phillip, at the end of the day, you don't have a right to be a media personality or a TV star. If you're a horrible person, you tell lies to your colleagues, you tell lies to your superiors, and you behave in a certain way where you abuse a position of power and the people below you, potentially, you know, allegedly. I don't think there's any reason he should ever work in the media again, and certainly not at ITV. So I think, you know, it's one thing to say we're hounding him. It's another thing to say that he's been rightly chastised for behaving and, you know, misusing his position for years.
I would just say that I doubt it's only Phil Schofield who's in the wrong here.
No, of course. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much we can say, but I think that it's quite clear that there's been a number of people who knew about this, bad behaviour when it came to management, a lot of protecting him as this big face of ITV. And I think this tells us something about the media and showbiz in general. There's a lot of protecting of people, a lot of protecting of reputations. There's a lot of throwing people under the bus if they don't suit your narrative. And I think this is why it's captured the imagination of so many people across the country, because it seems one rule for them, one rule for another. And I think that's why it gets to people. And he was protected for so long.
I have to say, it brings me no pleasure in saying this, but I think if this was a relationship between a senior male presenter and a younger woman runner, I don't actually think he would have got away with it for so long. And I think it is disappointing that in trying not to be homophobic, perhaps, people did not call out this behaviour sooner.
But I guess that's because it would have outed him. And I think that was the level, because you're outing someone as being gay, aren't you? Which is even more difficult thing to do than outing someone for having an extramarital affair.
Do you think This Morning should be taken off air? Would you go that far?
No, I don't. I don't think it should be taken off air. I think Alison and Dermot will do a great job on the show. I love Alison Hammond. She's one of my favourite TV personalities ever. And I think if she can save This Morning, then that's a good thing for Britain.
She's quite jolly. And
she's jolly,
she
different.
has a personality. I saw her standing next to Holly when they co-hosted together. And Holly looked like a piece of wood compared to her,
She
a plank
totally
compared to
outshone
her. Alison did outshine her.
She did. And I think when we're looking at the viewing figures with This Morning, they've dropped by about 170,000 since Phillip had resigned. So I actually think, you know, at the end of the day, This Morning is Phillip and Holly. And whilst they are gone...
Maybe they dropped because of the scandal. Maybe people...
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Do you think people will go back to This Morning after this whole fiasco?
Well, no, because on GB News there is an alternative.
Also, the whole thing about the show, if you've bothered watching it ever, I mean, it might not be top of your list, but it's all about talking about people's dilemmas and the way they've treated people in their lives, affairs,
irony,
and bullying, and all of this. And it would be impossible for Phil to keep a straight face, I think, now anyway, and Holly too.
Well, it's like
she'll be
when
minutes to
Phil handed David Cameron a list of MPs accused of certain things,
Yes.
by the way, were unsubstantiated on air and said, "Are you going to deal with this?" And I
was
think
terrible.
it's the moralising nature of this morning has been totally undermined by this.
But I mean, do you think Holly will be impacted by this, Emily?
I think she will. I mean, that statement that you just read out, it's a little bit, I guess pathetic's the right word for it. I mean, she's obviously trying to cover her back. She's saying, I was lied to, I'm the victim here. That may be true, it may not be true. I don't know exactly what's going on in her head. But of course, she looks weak, and I don't think she was that... Well, this is a bit harsh, but I don't think she was all that anyway.
Right.
So whether it was her and Phil that made the magic, or her and someone else, we'll find out, won't we?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, ITV have got real... one, they've got questions to answer, but also they're going to have to find replacements in a whole host of shows because Phillip Schofield was, you know...
All of those shows no one's
all
heard
of those shows, absolutely. Absolutely. I haven't actually heard of the two of them.
The Cube?
The Cube, and I can't even remember.
I have
the
heard
name
of the
other
Cube.
one.
I couldn't tell you what happened in it, but I have heard
It's
of
not
it.
the one where they get the kit off.
No, that's
the
on Channel 4.
one.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Anyway,